Hi, everyone. This is our Care Connection research project by Conrad, Jasmine, and Emily. So just as a background, our MRP is to gain a deeper understanding of Care Connection's intended target audience to meet the healthcare needs and interests of potential customers. So for our MDP, we talked about how should Care Connection effectively communicate its values and purposes to potential clients who are 45 years and older. Essentially, we want to talk about how we can spread brand awareness for Care Connection. So when we're looking at the RPM demographics and why we decided to specifically target people who are 45 years or older, we know that people who are 45 years or older are more likely to use RPM devices. And over a 12-month period, they also are more likely to stay engaged with their RPM devices as well. Also, when it comes to caretakers, 22.3% of caretakers are over the age of 45, and this is set to grow by 20% in 2030, making them the largest demographic when it comes to caretaking. And a lot of the times, caretakers are people who make essential healthcare decisions for those that they take care of. So just as a background on healthcare marketing, business-to-business marketing, which is what currently Care Connection uses, is common within the RPM industry. However, industry trends are shifting more towards business to consumer marketing. And in this Garbio and Lynn study, they talked about how important it is for RPM companies to be able to shift to this style of marketing to be able to stay making revenue. So now that we understand this, we're having a look at what makes a successful marketing campaign. And successful marketing campaigns had 6 results in common. So first would be increased interactions, and this goes hand in hand with feelings of clients feeling emotionally supported, because increased interactions can mean having good customer service. In addition to that, there's transparency and accessibility, which means, having prices listed on the website, and also accessibility, meaning, are people allowed to view how to instructional videos on how to use certain RPM products. Also, it's important to have good public perceptions, whether that be through customer testimonials or simply having good reviews on your website. Lastly, would be leading change, and this is something that Care Connection can really capitalize off of, since the RPM industry is changing the way that the healthcare system works and how doctors are able to look after their patients even outside of the traditional hospital. When we're looking at the gaps in the current research, first of all, there's a lack of understanding of what type of content is effective. For example, are instructional videos more important than being transparent with the prices of RPM products? What goes hand in hand is one platform more effective than the other when it comes to people researching for different healthcare advice? For example, is the internet more useful than the doctor? We personally want to fill the gap by assessing the internet, social media, multimedia, and doctors. And it's really important that we fill this gap to generate customer trust and help with overall revenue for Care Connection and spread brand awareness. Okay, passing it over to my colleague.
For our research design, we were guided by 2 research questions. Research question 1, we had what motivates patients ages 45 and over to choose an RPM service. And for research question 2, we had where do caregivers get health-related information from? And our hypothesis for these research questions were that participants would find medical websites to be a good source to look up information and persuade them to choose an RPM service. Next slide. For research question 1, we used a quantitative research style, which is a survey through Qualtrics to collect variable data on current health status, opinions on health monitoring devices, and health decision-making. The participants were found through social media networks, and apps, and media such as Facebook. We were able to get 175 participants, all 45 years and older, as this senior was directed towards seniors and caretakers. And after we collected the data, we would use SPSS to analyze them using different tests such as independent t-tests, ANOVA, and correlations. Next slide. For research question 2, we use a qualitative research, in-depth interviews to collect variable data on caretakers' sources of information for health-related topics. We used 9 participants who were caretakers. Each one was 20 to 30 minutes each. We'd ask them a variety of questions that were open-ended on where they get information from doctors, social media, or the internet. After we collected the information, we analyze them using codebooks and spreadsheets to separate the answers into different categories, where we compare and contrast the similarities and differences each one get and which ones they chose were the most information they would find and which one they rely more on. Next slide. For the results, we had 3 main themes: the internet as the main source, doctor visits as the initial source, and traditional social media as last sources they would go to for information health-wise. Next slide. For the internet, it provided a sense, many participants said they provided a sense of freedom with being able to find as much information as they can on the time they want. It allowed them to make judgments without bias from other doctors or from other people, as be able to look over the information and make their own decisions on what would be best health-wise and even money-wise. Important sites the participant mentioned were Google and WebMD. Some of the important characteristics they found were like price transparency, as most participants want to know how much they were spending, instructional videos, and being able to use health monitoring devices and other resources, easy access into the information, and the information being as simple as possible and being able to, as they want to know as much as they can before they sign on. And next slide. And I'm going to pass over to my colleague.
So as for doctor visits, doctors were the initial point of contact for all participants, whether that's through receiving diagnoses or medication from their doctors, or simply asking questions during doctor visits. However, we know from our interviews that a majority of people trusted the internet more than their doctors. There are some quotes on the side that talks about this, but to summarize, first of all, there were too little time to talk to doctors as they were bouncing from appointment to appointment. Second of all, they felt that doctors could be biased as they might have an agenda on the side that makes them money. Third of all, they're not as accessible when it comes to texting or when it comes to calling in doctor's offices as they can be backed up and busy. However, there was an outlier of one participant that said they only trusted doctors with medical information, and this person often texted with their doctors through telehealth. This is an important outlier just to make sure that everyone, to understand that everyone has different opinions, but also to make sure when you're looking at the internet, to make sure to build that trust within your customer base. Okay, passing it to Jasmine.
So lastly, we found social and traditional media to be the last 2 resorts for sources. We tested if participants found a large social media following and if ads for healthcare solutions on TV and magazines were important when deciding on the healthcare solution. And results showed that both factors were neither significantly important or not important, so it was more of a neutral factor. We also found that only 2 of 9 people that we interviewed followed health-related social media accounts, and one of them said it was their doctor friends, so they may have followed them because it was just because it was their friends, not necessarily for health reasons. But this leads us to question if health-related social media accounts even have a large following, since our data shows that not many people follow them in the first place. So for social media ads, some of them saw them more than others, but when they did, it was not very memorable to them. And for those who did not see them, said it's because they weren't on social media as much or they just simply scroll past them. But overall, there were negative feelings towards them because they found them to be not credible or they prefer other sources. And when it comes to health ads on TV, some said that they do a good job at explaining the product and side effects or that they were interesting, but other participants would not pay attention to them. And one participant said in particular that it was a little obnoxious that the way that they exaggerate things. So based on our findings, participants use these sources as a last resort due to the lack of credibility or attention towards these platforms. So social and traditional media may not be the best way for the company to communicate its offers because they don't really motivate patients enough and are not the preferred sources. Next slide, please. As for our recommendation, Care Connection originally mentioned that they wanted to target senior citizens ages 65 and older, but based on our literature review, we recommend expanding to individuals 45 and older and caretakers of senior citizens, since they do play a big role in their lives based on the people we interviewed. So expanding the customer base will allow them to connect with more individuals who are likely to engage and benefit from their products and services. We also recommend for Care Connection to focus on its websites than other media platforms, especially when starting to sell directly to consumers. People heavily rely on websites to provide enough information to make them want to purchase the product. So Care Connection should focus on creating a user-friendly website and improving its search engine rankings by implementing what was learned about their opinions and behaviors on RPM and other health-related topics in this research. And having information on the website can also refrain the potential consumers from looking at other sources such as competitors' website. Next slide, please. As for our limitation, we noted time because the topic was introduced to us and studied for about 4 months, but 2 of those months were used to create, conduct, and analyze all our research. And as new researchers, this is a pretty short time period. We also had limited resources. For example, we wanted to use Amazon Turks originally, but we found it to be too expensive. So we had to use convenient sampling and get responses and interviews from our personal networks. And as a result, there is sampling bias because it is not a random sample and it may not be a true representation in terms of the distribution of gender, age, geography, and so on. So if we had more time and resources, we could have focused on getting a better sample. And we also found some limitations in our research design. As our results focus on the 3 main themes, we noticed that after the fact, there were a lack of equal distribution of questions revolving around our themes, which led us to rely on one research method more than the other, or utilize only certain questions in our survey when analyzing our results. And this again goes back to needing more time and resources to do further research, to increase our knowledge, perfect our research methods, and collect better data. And passing it over back to Emily to close off.
So to sum everything up, transitioning to business to consumer marketing is essential for Care Connection. And as the internet is an important source for participants, we understand the importance of the focusing on building Care Connection's website. As Care Connection already has the outline of a website, it's important to just further develop it. So this is an easier project to embark on. So as a result, they should integrate good SEO practices, better customer service, whether that have a phone line or maybe a live chat, and also have information more accessible, whether that be how to use a certain device or pricing. Because as we know, accessibility equals more trust in potential consumers. So thank you so much for listening to our presentation and for your time. Here are all our references from our literature review if you would like to learn more. Thank you again.